There is a bar in Tauranga called the Matsua Bar. I haven't been. Heard great things about it. They made a bold move by removing all of their pokie machines and aimed to create a more family-friendly and community-focused environment. The owners, April Fletcher and Jeff Hazelwood, have managed the bar for 2.5 years. Initially, they reduced the number of machines from 9 to 7 and then decided to eliminate them entirely in June last year. Fletcher expressed concerns about the negative impact of gambling on the community, especially given the bar's proximity to schools and the increasing number of young families in the area. Hazelwood highlighted the challenges posed by new regulations that require staff to monitor pokie machine usage closely, including checking in on the players 3 times an hour and discussing gambling habits with frequent users. He said the bar staff are not trained counsellors and making this requirement difficult to implement effectively. So the couple said removing the machines has not hurt their business financially. In fact, the opposite has happened. They say they've now got extra dining space, so the food side of the business is doing better. They're also attracting patrons who had previously avoided the bar due to the presence of pokies. Now, this decision aligns with broader effects in Tauranga to address gambling-related harm. Last year, the City Council adopted a sinking lid policy, preventing the establishment of new pokie venues and machines, particularly in areas of high social deprivation. So this is great news for Matsua Bar. But what else is going on around the rest of the country? The Problem Gambling Foundation's Advocacy and Public Health Director is Andree Froude, and joins me now. Andree, good afternoon.
Hi.
How are you? Good to have you on the show.
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Look, it's great hearing about Matsua Bar. It shows that venues can replace pokie machines and create more family-friendly spaces without being financially hurt. I mean, this story is encouraging, yes?
Oh, very. We love hearing stories like this, and it's not that we're anti-gambling or anything like that. It's just that these are really harmful machines. They cause a lot of harm in our communities, and they are, in fact, the most harmful form of gambling in New Zealand. So a bar that's made that decision not to have pokies and to do other things, it's great. It's a really good story.
See, Andree, that's interesting because you just said, I mean, you can, some can say, like we can gamble multiple ways in this country, but the damage that the pokies do, you said it is the most harmful form of gambling, which to me is quite staggering. Can you explain why? Is it highly addictive? What about the pokies makes it, so addictive?
Well, as you said, they are highly addictive and they're designed to be that way. Some very clever people have designed them to make sure that, they get people into the zone where they become unaware of what's going on around them or how much time they've spent gambling. You often see them in little rooms, like even in that Matsua Bar, they said they're in a sort of another room tucked away. And they are often like that, and it's dimly lit, so very easy for people to lose track of how long they've been there. But, apart from the fact they're designed that way, there's so many of them in our communities, and you can go into some bars and they've got 18 of these machines. And you don't see people socially talking to each other. It's just people sitting at these machines and not talking to each other and putting money in. And they're also generally in our, higher deprivation communities where people can't necessarily afford to be losing this money. So, yes, they do cause a lot of harm. And actually, the majority of people, or nearly 50% of people that present to services like ours for help with gambling, say it's because of pokies in our community.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
DIA says that the Matsua Bar's gambling licence was one of 109 that was surrendered nationwide last year. Andree, is the number of venues with pokies declining in New Zealand then? Or did they just relicense somewhere else?
No, the numbers of pokies generally is trending down, but the spend isn't. So people are still losing over $1 billion nationally in these machines, and that's just in our community. See, it's a huge amount of money.
Over $1 billion.
Yes.
Over $1 billion.
In a year and is lost
gosh.
on these machines, and that's not including casinos because they operate differently. So that's a huge amount of money. And of course, you know, some of these are little communities where these pokies are. And if you think of it like that, it's a lot of money being sucked out of a little community. So, so the numbers of machines are going down, and that's fantastic. We want to see that continue to happen. And that a lot of that is down to councils introducing sinking lids, as you mentioned in your intro.
Can you explain that, Andree? The sinking lid policy? How this works?
Yes, it's the best policy that we've got. I can't say that it's great, but it's the best one we've got to reduce the numbers of machines and hopefully gambling harm. So what it means is if a venue is to close, those pokies they go out of the circulation, so they close and they can't be moved somewhere else. So it keeps the lid sinking, if you know what I mean.
Gotcha.
So the numbers of pokies will go down, but it relies on a venue closing, and often that can take a very, very long time.
The Matsua Bar owners said that, you know, the strict rules for pokies having to check in every 15 minutes was one of the reasons too that, you know, they mentioned, my staff are not counsellors, and they also worried about kids getting in there. But I mean, do those rules go far enough, do you think? A 15-minute check and a bit of a chat?
Well, the very reason those rules were introduced is because the venues just weren't doing enough, and too many people were falling through the cracks. And there were some terrible stories, actually, of people who had experienced significant harm. So the minister at the time introduced these new regulations, and it does require the staff to monitor the gambling area more frequently, monitor trips to the ATM, check in on people. But, you know, that's what they're meant to do. They have to do it with alcohol, so they've got to do it with pokies too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they have someone intoxicated going up to the bar, well, they are required to intervene then. It's no different for gambling. And although we recognise it can be difficult to have that conversation, it's just got to be done. And, so that they've been put there for a reason.
Isn't this a broken system though, Andree? Because you know it's inextricably linking gambling harm with the survival of community groups and sports and services. This is where it's just so strange to me.
It is, and I couldn't have said it better myself. You know, we've just become so reliant now on the proceeds of gambling to fund our community and sports groups. And I'm not saying that they don't do amazing things. They do. But we shouldn't be taking money from some of our high deprivation communities and using that to fund community and sports groups, you know, because that money is being lost by people who just often can't afford to be losing it. So we need to be thinking about where the money is coming from rather than where it's going to, and unfortunately, there's been a real unhealthy reliance created now.
In your role, Andree, with the Problem Gambling Foundation, have you found, particularly in harder times, which we've been in for a couple of years, do people gamble more, even though
they do?
The money they're getting in is less? Isn't that interesting? What's the As they want to feel good? I'm not quite sure what's behind it.
Well, I think people don't always gamble to win money. In fact, a lot of instances, they are actually just gambling as a form of escapism, particularly on pokies, actually, because it's that time where they can actually zone out and not think about things that might be going on in their lives. Sometimes it is about, I'll try and gamble just to get some money or to win back money I've lost.
Yeah.
But often it's not. It's just pure escapism.
It's like a vicious cycle.
So, very much so, yeah. And particularly with addictive or continuous forms of gambling like pokies, they're much, much more harmful.
So, like a story of the Matsua Bar, which, a lot of bars are doing it, and 109 surrendered nationwide last year. Should they be kind of used as kind of like PR to other bars or establishments to say, hey, look, this is what they did. And even though some people said, oh, you're silly, you're going to lose money. But they've turned it around and they say that they're doing actually financially or actually better. I just don't, how do you get the message to other bars or establishments that they can go it alone? They can go it without a pokie machine.